Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host Tom Woods, and today we'll be giving our review on the BFG, which is the 2016 film directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Mark Rylance and Ruby Barnhill. I guess before going into this one, this is kind of a personal one for me at least. I'm not sure about you, but the BFG, written by Roald Dahl, I think is a book that more or less every kid reads growing up. I was a huge Roald Dahl fan. I read most of his stuff, watched most of the films that came out, such as Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder, and then films like The Witches and Danny the Champion of the World. But the BFG was always one that was probably closest to my heart growing up. I had the book, and really my entrance into the world of the BFG was the 1989 animated movie. I think that was starring David Jason, who provided the voice for BFG. I watched that film so many times. I still have the VHS cassette tape, and so I'm gonna let you go into your thoughts now. But
okay.
Just initially for me, it was very hard for me to distance myself from that movie, probably down to a nostalgia thing. But I do really like that interpretation of the BFG. So when I was seeing things like this, I really didn't know all too much what to make of it.
Yeah. See, I haven't watched the animated BFG film in quite a while. I remember listening to the audio cassette tape as a kid, which was absolutely great. I loved it. And so I think because I haven't watched it in a while, I could disassociate myself with that version of it. I mean, they are two completely different things. And I haven't read the book in a while, but yeah, it kind of seemed to me like it was kind of fresh. It felt like my childhood again. And
oh man, you're getting deep on this one.
And I think that's kind of when I think back to the BFG, I always remember listening to the cassette tape. And watching the original or the 1989 animated film, and I think I'll probably remember this fondly as well. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it struck a chord with me. Really did.
It's a nice film. If I'm gonna sort of give it a title, it's nice. It's harmless, and I think that the 89 one. I did watch it fairly recently. I think I watched it earlier this year. It is very dated. The animation at the time is still fantastic. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of 2D hand-drawn animation, so even the lesser quality of 2D animation, I still, applaud them for all their efforts, because it is a hard animation to pull off properly and to make it look good. But David Jason in that original was just so goddamn likeable. He really made that character his own, even with just the voice work. So I guess we'll go into the plot for this one for anyone, living under a rock who doesn't know anything about the BFG. Oh, absolutely read the book and read all of Roald Dahl's books. They're fantastic. But the plot is a girl named Sophie encounters the big friendly giant who, despite his intimidating appearance, turns out to be a kind-hearted soul who is considered an outcast by the other giants because, unlike them, he refuses to eat children. So, as usual, our reviews on this channel, we will always start with spoiler-free, so if you haven't read the book and you know absolutely diddly squat about the BFG, you don't have to worry about this section, and then when we get into spoilers, we'll give you a warning for that.
Do those people actually exist who know diddly squat about the BFG?
There have to be some. I can only imagine there have to be some, but I feel sorry for those people. Because they have missed out a huge part of their childhood if they've just let this one slip under their radar.
Yeah.
But before we actually get into the film, and we were kind of talking a bit about this before we hit record, I need to talk about my actual film-going experience with this one.
Yes, you do.
Oh boy. Whenever I go and see like an animated film or a kids film or a family film, I always dread the experience. Because I know what kind of audience is going to be there, and it's an audience who rarely like to shut up or watch the film or pay attention to it, whose attention spans are very limited, and it often detracts from my enjoyment of the film. I know it's a very selfish way to look at it, but, you know, I've paid my money. I've paid my £10 40p to get into this movie. I expect to sit in silence and appreciate the movie for what it is. Well, when I get there, there were only 4 people in the screening, and I thought, oh, okay. You know, this is what I like. It's almost like a private screening reserved for people that want to appreciate it. The film was about to start. We were almost there. It was home stretch, and a family with about 7 kids stroll in. And they could pick anywhere to sit in the cinema. They could pick absolutely anywhere they wanted. They picked the row directly behind me, and then they proceed to not shut up for the entirety of the whole movie. Speaking loudly, laughing, talking amongst themselves, not paying attention to the film, and the parents were not parenting correctly because they weren't telling them to shut up or be quiet because there's other people watching. They were taking selfies on their phones, so I was getting the flash from their phone behind me. And especially in like the tender moments and the real character moments between Sophie and the BFG, which are the strengths of this film, I couldn't connect to because my hearing just kept snapping back to these kids behind me that wouldn't shut up. So, like Jungle Book, which was another horrific cinema-going experience for me, I think that my attitude and my mood probably rubbed off on my overall review of this film when I initially came out of it, to the point where it just put me in a bad mood for the whole thing, and I just couldn't get invested into the film at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Don't take
a scathing review.
Don't take your kids to the cinema, folks.
See, I mean, this is kind of a bit of a tangent, but screw it. I think you like anyone who gets their phone out in the cinema to do stuff like they could get chucked out and get criminal proceedings going, because that could be that they're taking pictures of the film, which is copyright infringement. So someone should have really been there to kind of make sure that if they were doing that, then like one of the stewards or something.
Mm.
Well, I don't know. I had a pleasant viewing experience.
Oh, I'm glad you
did. A really pleasant viewing experience. I got my ticket. There was about 6 people in the cinema.
Mm.
4 of them, well, maybe about 10. 4 of them were a family.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a sucker for once you get your ticket, printed on it is your allocated seat number, and it doesn't matter if the cinema's empty, you stick to the seat number because there has to be an order to proceedings.
I have bared witness to this.
Yeah. We have to sit here because it says on our ticket. And so my ticket said it was in row H14 was my seat, and it was sat 5 seats apart from a family. One of their kids was 3 years old, about 3 or 4, and another one was like a 6-month-old baby. And I thought at the time, this is gonna be horrible, because that baby's gonna just scream and cry, and it's just gonna be irritating for when you're trying to watch. And it had a few moments during the trailers. I mean, as soon as it saw Kevin Spacey in 9 Lives, it was like crying its eyes out.
That's understandable.
Well, no, I think that was
up
me
at night as well. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it had a few moments in the trailers, but then it was like the most well-behaved child on the planet.
It was taken in by the whimsy and the wonder of Spielberg directing a Roald Dahl project.
Yes, and it was a very pleasant viewing experience. And yeah, I don't know. I think probably you may have been tainted by your horrible experience at the cinema. Like, I just don't understand. Just don't. What's the point in going?
Yeah.
What's the point in spending £10? What is it, 40?
£10.40 for this film, yeah.
On a ticket, if you're just gonna not watch the movie.
Exactly. It was just the fact that they weren't telling them to shut up. But anyway, that was a massive tangent. But I think I wanted to paint a picture of what I was going into this film with.
Yeah.
And I'm just reading a bit of behind the scenes stuff here on Wikipedia, which is pretty cool. It says that Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, and obviously Kathleen Kennedy is the producer and stuff behind the Star Wars franchise and has worked alongside Spielberg for most of his career, I believe. They began working on an adaptation of the BFG back in the 90s, it says. Wow. DreamWorks actually picked up the rights to the book in 2011, and then it was passed to loads of other people and loads of other studios, and then obviously settled on Spielberg back in 2014. So I didn't know that. I mean, I'm just reading that for the first time now, but that's pretty cool. So I guess, where do we start with this movie? Shall we just go straight in with the title character himself?
Yeah.
So Mark Rylance, I've only ever seen him in one movie. I know he's quite a prolific stage actor. He likes doing his theatre work. But his first bit of exposure I got to him was with Bridge of Spies, also directed by Steven Spielberg, which was, in hindsight, was probably one of my favourite films from last year. I absolutely loved that film, and Mark Rylance picked up the supporting actor Oscar, I believe, for that. They've got the Academy Award for it. Definitely well deserved for that film. So when he was initially cast, I remembered what he looked like in that film, and I was like, you know what, I can see it. Like, I can see his personality and his expression melding well with the BFG. And then the trailers came out and we saw that they'd done all this motion capture work on it. And the initial emotion that washed over me was fear, because that kind of lifelike CGI animation, which has been used in a few films such as Tintin, Polar Express and things like that, has always creeped me out. Always.
Yeah, well, it's because it's getting too close to the uncanny valley, and your brain doesn't kind of it wants to think it's real, but it just knows something's off.
And in films like that, especially with Polar Express, where the characters aren't really larger than life, they do very lifelike things. Another example was there was a Christmas Carol movie that came out with Jim Carrey playing Ebenezer Scrooge, which was done in similar animation. I always think, why can't you just do this in live action? If you get the actors in and perfectly recreate them into a computer, just make it live action. But when I saw this with Mark Rylance, I was thinking, well, obviously you can't have him physically there playing the BFG in the sense of what it looks like on camera. But honestly, watching this film, if this isn't nominated for Best Visual Effects at this year's Oscars, I don't know what should be. This is without a doubt a visual treat all the way through it. Even when it's not used in visual effects, even just the sets and everything, like the street, the attention to detail as well. I was remembering like the orphanage at the start of the film, and like the BFG's house, and just the detail on all the things in the background that are on shelves that are hanging up. And I was remembering Quentin Blake's illustrations in the book. And I mean, this film's already been praised for its faithfulness to the source material, and I said this in my reaction, like, they've got everything right in terms of how it looks. It's all there, and it's absolutely just gorgeous to watch. And there were some moments, actually, I cussed these kids out, but there were moments, especially involving the dreams and the world of the dreams, where those kids just shut up and they kept going like, wow. And I was honestly kind of doing the same. This was an absolute visual delight, and I know we've kind of jumped on from Mark Rylance, but I think that the visual effects coupled with his performance easily make him the standout of this whole entire film. He
is easily the best thing about this. His performance is wonderful. And the first moment he appears on screen and delivers his first line he absolutely loses himself in the character of the BFG, and I think it's one of the best performances I've seen this year from anybody. And I know, like, see, I really want Mark Rylance to like do it 2 years in a row now.
Yeah,
because that was something else. I really enjoyed his performance of it. And you talk about the visual effect, and they were absolutely splendid. See, I thought the same as you. I didn't, when the first trailers came out, I kind of thought, oh, this, I don't know, is it going to be any good? But you know, it really did take my breath away. And from the first moments of the orphanage, I was sort of hooked, and it made me laugh. It really was like watching it as a kid again. It really was. This is so far. This is probably the best film I've seen this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn, that is. See, yeah. I wouldn't go that far. Like, I enjoyed the film, apart from my experience of the people around me. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film, but I couldn't help myself from comparing it to that animated one. And I know nostalgia plays a lot into that, but there were some narrative beats. There were some particular deliveries of certain dialogue or exchanges that were missing from the animated one that I really missed. And I would have liked to have seen that more, but this isn't a bad film at all. I know I'm sort of skipping ahead to my overall recommendation, but it is a nice film, and unfortunately this movie is kind of flopping. I've been seeing that it's, it hasn't brought in much at all. It's is it on its second week? Because I think it came out in the US about a week ago, didn't it? Or is it still
I think so.
Coming out? Let's have a look. It came out in Cannes in May, and the United States got it July 1st. Yeah, so they've had it for quite a while then. But I mean, so far it's made 68 million on a budget of 140 million, but then you need to take into consideration all the marketing and everything that goes on top of it. So I would like to see this movie make its money back, especially when it's got the talent of Spielberg attached to it, and the performance of Mark Rylance and the visual effects that went into it, because I do think it was done with love, and I do think it was done with care and appreciation for the source material. And I would honestly like to see more Roald Dahl adaptations in a similar vein to this. If Disney continue to do it. I mean, they keep cranking out their live action adaptations of their previous Disney films, and I mean, Disney made this one, so I'd like to see them do a lot more of this. But going back to Mark Rylance's performance really quickly, when I was talking about his theatre work, it almost did feel like a theatre performance, and that's like not knocking it at all. I mean, I could see him on like a stage performance of the BFG on stage doing this material, like 6 nights a week. Like, it really is that good. Like, and it's a very just, you have Sophie in the BFG, and there are obviously other characters all around them, but the main crux of the story relies on their interaction.
It does, yeah. I must say, he gets all the mannerisms down, and just there are things in there that he does that you wouldn't think like anyone would be able to pick up on, but they're there. And I can't tell you how much I absolutely adored this film. Did you ever see Hook?
Yes, I did. I love that film.
It's terrible. And Spielberg actively dislikes it as well.
Really?
Yeah, he does.
Oh,
he does.
Man, I fucking love Hook. But I've recently, like in the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of people that don't like it, and I really don't understand why. I adore that film. And
I think it's kind of him sort of apologising for Hook by.
He doesn't need to apologise for that film. It's
one
of Dustin Hoffman's best films.
No. But I don't know, the way the BFG talks, it's exactly like you would imagine him sounding in the books.
Yeah,
it really is like I can't praise it. I honestly can't praise it enough.
All goes back to the imagination of Roald Dahl, and it was taking me back to reading those books and reading words like scrumdiddlyumptious and what is it, Frobscottle, and all things like that. And even the animated one, I mean, the animated one was a great adaptation too. It did change bits, obviously, and sort of embellished certain bits, but I mean, the crux of it was still there. And again, with the visual effects and sort of playing off a live action actor, I was almost taken to the scene from A Hobbit Unexpected Journey with Bilbo and Gollum, with Martin Freeman acting against Andy Serkis, and just how Andy Serkis gets lost in this character. Mark Rylance absolutely does with the BFG, and I honestly would hold up the BFG as one of the best visual effects characters we've had in film history. If you're going to do them, you probably have, Gollum, King Kong, Caesar, and I would honestly put BFG right up alongside that. He really did get lost into this character and made it his own, and he embodied absolutely everything about that character. And I guess we should talk about Sophie now, played by Ruby Barnhill. Now, this is where I'm going to not rant about the film a little bit, but bring up more negatives. I didn't like her interpretation of Sophie, in all honesty. There were some bits where I found her to be incredibly wooden. Now, I know this is her first film role, And I mean, I'm really fascinated because I will buy the Blu-ray of this. I absolutely will. I can't even imagine how amazing this film will look on the big screen again in 1080p quality. But she did seem really wooden, and I know she's probably against a green screen a lot, and I don't know how much interaction she actually had with Mark Rylance on set, whether he was present, whether it was just his voice and she had to react to green golf balls or whatever. And if I'm going to compare her acting to anyone, it's kind of like Mowgli from the recent live action adaptation of Jungle Book, Neil Sethi. He was on a green screen, he wasn't reacting with anything, and I didn't love his performance, but I found his performance infinitely more believable than hers. You probably liked her performance, I guess, if you just love this film, but I thought that she was the weakest out of the two of them, certainly. And I think under a better actress, and I don't know if it was the direction as well, because she seemed just really bratty all the way through this movie, and I didn't really connect with her or sympathise with her. So she was one of the biggest criticisms I would have for this film.
No, I would disagree there, because I think she actually gave it more. I'm trying to find the words. Really, it was more. It felt more accessible with her. I felt more. Trying to figure out how to say this, but I found her believable as sort of a snarky, well, not so much snarky, but kind of a sarcastic,
headstrong,
feisty,
yeah.
And I mean, she does all that stuff at the beginning, in terms of the orphanage stuff. She just does what the matron's supposed to do, but better. And I think she's quite caring, and I really enjoyed that about her. I thought she was very good in it, and even though it's her first film role, she'll only get better.
Yeah, I hope so. And I mean, they're obviously your main two, and should we talk about the villains of now, or would you rather talk about the world itself of Giant Country?
Well, you can do them both at the sort of same time, can't you?
Okay, I'll talk about the giants first, the evil giants. When I did my reactions to this, I thought, okay, the film looks great, visually looks stunning, performances look great. The one area of concern I had was the evil giants, in that they really looked like they'd not oversimplified them, but made them a lot less terrifying than they are in the book, and certainly a lot less terrifying than they are in the animated 1989 film. By God, I mean, I watched that film again earlier this year, and I don't know if it was childhood trauma creeping back into my head, but my God, there's a jump scare in that movie where one breaks into his house and starts trashing the place. And it's the scene where, I guess I can't go into that if it's a spoiler, but it's a scene where one of the giants almost attempts to eat Sophie. And the Flesh Lump Eater as well, who's kind of the main antagonist in the film. He's the boss of the giants. He is nightmarish in the animated film. And I never got that sense of dread or being scared of these evil giants all the way through this movie. They were very much played for laughs. They were very goofy. They weren't particularly grotesque. And I don't think they was as harsh on the BFG as they are in the animated one. And I think that's a big part of Roald Dahl's books. I mean, you look at the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I know it's not the most faithful to the book, but by God, that has some dark material in there. That boat scene where they go through the tunnel, and everything like that. And I think that Roald Dahl is at its best when it does have that underlying scary quality to it. And I miss films like that. I miss family films, children's films that do have that tension to them. They do have that scary quality to them. You look at older Disney films, or Return to Oz is a revered example of that. A kid's film that has a little bit more bite to it, has a bit more gumption about it. And I would have liked to have seen this film maybe take a few more chances and really, really show us some genuinely terrifying giants for the antagonists of this movie. And I think, in all honesty, that the antagonists of this film are my biggest criticism and why I don't completely love this film. BFG was great. I just wish all the other giants were as well.
Okay, here's where I'm going to disagree with you again. See, for me, I found the Giants. I mean, yes, they were played for laughs, or primarily for laughs, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't think you particularly need. They were threatening. They were as threatening as they needed to be for the film, and I don't think you needed to make them any more scary because the whole atmosphere of Giant Country wasn't terrifying. It wasn't. So for me, having grotesque giants would sort of be like, what? Hold on, what? I don't know, but I think I did laugh at the Giants, and I you know, they're goofy in their own way, and it is quite funny to see, but they also are threatening. I do think where I would say it deteriorates from the books is the book. The Giants in that and in the animated were very scary things to look at. But for me, I think where the film deviates is that it's more that they're all siblings. It's sort of a sibling picking on the runt of the litter more than anything. And I think it works for the film. I don't think having more grotesque sort of monster like giants would work for the tone. But that's my opinion on that.
They felt a lot like the trolls from the first Hobbit movie to me. The comedy trolls that are all squabbling amongst each other about how they're going to cook Bilbo and the dwarves. It felt very much like that sensibility to it. And that works for like, well, it is a kid's... I mean, I was going to like compare it to The Hobbit. The Hobbit book is very childlike.
Yeah, but see, I think where that comparison sort of falls apart is because the first Hobbit film itself is quite dark, and it just kind of, it's a shift in tone that doesn't really work for the film. But I think because the tone in this is quite light, it's quite bright, it's quite vibrant, it's a nice light tone throughout. I mean, there are dark elements in it, but they're not as dark as the animated or the book. And I think that works for the tone, because if you had like more grotesque, it would just be a tonal shift that just wouldn't work like the ones in like the one in the Hobbit.
I guess they just didn't feel that imposing to me, and I think a lot of that is down to the designs of them. Just visually, a lot of them not look the same, but they all have like a particular aesthetic. Like they all kind of dress the same. It's very kind of Scottish Highlands garb that they wear. I can't really describe it. There's a lot of sort of tartan and, you know, tunics that they wear and things like that. Whereas I'm remembering the scene from the original when the army show up and they're trying to secure them as they're all sleeping, and that's a really, really tense scene in the animated one, still is, where they're trying to loop all these harnesses underneath them as they're sleeping and try not to wake them up. Thunder and lightning, and all the designs of the giants are so unique, and I'd actually really like you to like go back and watch that and like see if your opinions have changed on it or anything, or like compare it, because I'd quite like to do a review on that one myself, because I've been considering about whether to do like a series for the channel where I just look at sort of like your film reflections but just centered on animated films.
Okay.
I'd really like to do that, and I think I know you were saying this is a different film, and of course it is. It's for a modern audience. It's so many decades after that last one, but I think that it is kind of good to compare and see how two visionaries handle the same material and how they change it. But I do think, for me anyway, the weakest part of it was the giants. Should we talk about any of the side characters, or should we save that for spoilers? Because I know that one of your favourite scenes is involved very much with the side characters.
Yes, it is. I would perhaps save that for spoilers. I mean, if for those of you that have read the book, it's you know kind of exactly what this bit is. Yeah. But for those who haven't, I think we should probably wait for spoilers for that.
We can talk more about the world as well. I absolutely loved the way Giant Country looks. Again, very different to the animated one. The animated one was very barren. It looked very much like it kind of looked like Dune, actually. It was like just kind of this barren, desolate wasteland with like a couple of really ancient structures to it, which I kind of liked. It was very eerie, especially the portal that they go through. But this one was just an absolute feast for the eyes in terms of visuals. Gorgeous landscapes, all obviously rendered in computer animation, but when it's heightened like this and it's like based off a kid's book, I don't mind when they go out of their way with the CGI. It was like Jungle Book as well, when most of that, like 98% of that film was made in a computer. It's still, when it looks as good as this, have no problem with it at all.
Yeah.
I thought it helped enrich it and make it feel like this fantasy world, this larger than life world with these impossible structures and these impossible landscapes. But it looked great, everything down to the detail in BFG's house. He's got like this big pirate ship in there that he sleeps in. Dream Country, oh my god.
That was fabulous to look at.
If I'm gonna just like have like a visual montage of all my favourite cinema going scenes this year, that's absolutely up there. And that's where I love, like, there is so much creativity in this film. The way the dreams look themselves. I mean, in the cartoon, they were just kind of wisps of light, and that's initially what I thought they were in this. But when you get into the film and he's describing what all the dreams are about and what stories the dreams have, the dreams themselves take the shape of that. And they're kind of animated in such a way, and it was fantastic. I just, hats off to all the people in the visual effects department in this film. They absolutely deserve the Oscar this year.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was breathtaking. It really was. It honestly, I can't. I keep saying I can't. Like, wow. You just have to see it to kind of believe that. You know, this is actually rendered in a computer. I mean, it is gotten to the point now where, you know, visual effects have become an art form. I know they're kind of played to hell with all the really awful uses of like robots smashing each other, but the Transformers being the main villain in that. But like the things the visual effects artists can do with computer animation is just gorgeous, and I mean, it is spectacularly good looking,
and just the cinematography in it as well.
Yes.
I'm looking at the guy who did the cinematography, and I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name. Is it like Janusz Kaminski? I think is his name. I mean, there were so many scenes in it, and you see him in the trailer as well. There's a scene where it's very much like Peter Jackson's King Kong, with King Kong and Anne sitting on the bluffs looking out at the sunset, and it's just Sophie and the BFG sitting on this bank with the sunset in the background. It's jaw-dropping stuff to look at, and it's kind of the reaction people had, well, certain kind of deluded people had to Avatar, where it was like they wanted to live in Pandora, and they had this absolutely just huge cathartic moment seeing this world brought to life on the camera. There were moments like that, especially in the Dream Country, where I had that, and it just looked absolutely stunning to watch, and they were some of my favourite bits in the film.
Yes.
Music. John Williams is back in another collaboration with Steven Spielberg. Not much to write home about with the score on this one, unfortunately. There is a main theme to it, which really just sort of like kicks in at the credits where I heard it, but to me, John Williams recently, and I don't blame the guy, like the guy's getting on. I mean, he's what, like 84, 85 right now? And to still bring out the level of music that he does is absolutely incomparable, but it did kind of sound like the filler music to Harry Potter for me in this one. It's really not much of a breakaway from previous scores he's done, and I maybe would have liked something a bit more unique for the BFG.
I don't know,
it worked for the film, don't get me wrong.
It did. I would agree it's a more subdued score than he's done, than the sort of bombastic Star Wars or Indiana Jones or even Harry Potter stuff he's done, even previous Spielberg films that he's worked on. But I don't know, I enjoyed how it accompanied the scenes, and it was more I can't think of the word.
It had the whimsy to go along with the film a lot,
Yes.
and then I think in the more emotional scenes, that's where, you know, he really kicks up the emotion with the score, and that's where it really kicked in for me. But it never, with so many of his other films, like you look at Superman is my favourite orchestral piece ever made for film, the main Superman theme, and you watch that film and the score has an identity of its own. Like, you have the acting, which stands, you know, testament to this day, but the score itself, you notice it more. or Star Wars, for example, you notice the score above the action.
Yeah.
With this one, it's very much sort of tethered to the actual film itself, and it feels more like a whole rather than here's the acting happening and here's the music on top of it, if that makes any kind of sense. Is that all we can talk about really for spoiler free? Do you want to just give sort of like a positive, negative, or?
I'll give my positive, negative, and sort of overall reaction to it. It's kind of a more kid-friendly version of the animated film and book. I know they're like kids' films anyway, but it is more appropriate, I think, for modern-day audiences, which I really enjoy. And I think it does. I mean, if you watch it, you'll just think, wow, this is me being a kid again. I just think it has that quality to it.
Yeah.
In terms of some negatives, I don't know.
As I say, you're going to struggle to find one, aren't you? If you're going to rank this as your favourite.
Yeah, I will. I think positives, I think that Mark Rylance is
absolutely
the all-out positive. The visual design is breathtaking. And it actually gets going rather quickly, which I thought was really good. I thought they were going to linger on the orphanage stuff for quite a while, but it seemed to get going really at a quick pace, which I quite liked. But yeah, it's wonderful. It's really good, and it's Steven Spielberg. I mean, Steven Spielberg is just a genius of, like, in terms of how he structures and directs his movies.
With the exception of one notable one,
which is
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. That's always going to be the black mark on his record, I'm afraid.
But it's still, you know, has the Spielberg mark on it. But with this, it was very much no interference from anybody. He just got on and did his thing, and you know, it's absolutely wonderful.
If you can't think of a negative, can you think of an area that you still enjoyed but would have liked developed more, or could have been improved in any way, or did you just love everything about it?
I probably would have liked to have seen, like, because some of the giants, they didn't really have much screen time or really talk all that much, and I probably would have liked to have seen more interaction with the giants, but I don't think I can really criticise the film for that.
No. Okay, I guess my positives are going to be pretty similar to yours. I've actually found myself liking the film a lot more just talking to you about it. I guess, as I said, I guess that the people in the audience sort of put me in a bad mood throughout it all. Positives, absolutely Mark Rylance's performance, one of the best acting performances I've seen this year, and sadly, you know, everyone's been talking about it with Andy Serkis, how motion capture actors don't get any recognition for their roles, and sadly I don't think he's going to get much recognition for this, which is an absolute outrage because he played that character. So there's that. The visual effects in the film are absolutely second to none, consistently good throughout the entire film. That goes for characters, environments, and just absolutely everything. It was a joy to watch. Negatives, as I say, Ruby Barnhill's performance I didn't really gravitate all that much towards, and I would have liked to have seen even more scenes of just her and BFG, more of those quieter emotional moments rather than the kind of whimsical hijinks that ensues. And my biggest fault with the film, absolutely without shadow of a doubt, are the evil giants. I think this film, as you said, is a very dumbed down kiddie version. Not that it's done in like a really horrible, just simplified way, but I think that a film like this could have benefited with a slightly more darker edge to it, a little bit more bite to it, so that the antagonists, you really genuinely fear them as these child-eating menaces, rather than kind of, you know, a comedy troupe of giants that are pratfalling over and giggling, etc. But if anything, this film, more than anything, I mean, I don't watch many behind the scenes, unfortunately. Like, I tend to buy a movie on Blu-ray or DVD and just tend to watch the film and that's it. And I really hate myself for that because I know I'm missing out a lot on the art of filmmaking itself. But when I get this on Blu-ray, I hope that this is chock full of behind the scenes stuff because I really, really want to see how they made this, down to the visual effects and Mark Rylance's sort of presence, whether he was actually on set or not. So I would recommend this movie. I would recommend this to anyone who had a love of the book, of the original animated film, who just likes nice family films. That's probably the best description I can give it. It's a nice family film. I'd compare it very much in line to the likes of Paddington in recent years. This film's definitely better than that one, but sort of it's very a similar tone and accomplishes the same kind of things. So I would definitely recommend it. Give your money towards it because we want more films like this that are done with as much care as this, you know, and love for the source material. So that'll do it for our spoiler-free section. We'll go into spoilers now. We'll hit on some areas that we couldn't before. If you are just a complete novice to the books and, you know, the previous film, etc. So, Tom, is there any area that you wanted to talk about first?
Oh, wow, yes. There is. It is the scene I couldn't describe in the non-spoiler section. The scenes involving the Queen I thought were absolutely absurd. Absurd in a good way because they made me absolutely cackle. And I know sort of we spoke about this sort of briefly before we pushed record, is that fart gags, in anything else it would have just been lazy, but I don't know, it really worked. I found myself absolutely cackling at all the farting in it. I really did.
And it's a famous bit from the book.
Yeah.
The whole Frobscottle drink, and when he brought it out and he was drinking and they were talking about the bubbles going down, took me right back to that animated film in the book, and I was so glad that they kept it in because it's not integral to the plot. You know, it's just like a little kind of fun scene to add in, but again, it's that respect for the source material, and I'm so glad they kept it in. I mean, the original animated one has a whole song devoted to it about whiz popping, and they're blasting all around the room, and it's funny for that kind of film, but this was, you know, he just does it once initially, and then it gets the payoff again at Buckingham Palace where everyone's kind of doing it, even the corgi dogs.
Yeah, I think the build up to it adds more because you know it's coming, but it just lingers so much on sort of people's reactions to first trying it, and then about 30 seconds later, honestly, it feels like an enormous amount of time before the farting actually happens. And I don't know, I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, the stuff with the Queen was great, and it's this, like, I mean, if I'm going into a negative as well, with this bit, the stuff with the Queen, there's one character in particular that was kind of completely bonkers, and I don't know how to feel about him. On the one hand, I really liked how absurd it was that this character, this supposed butler, was then chief of security at Buckingham Palace and also in the army for some reason, just goes along with the army to get the giant. He's like every single role around this palace you can think of, and also has a different accent to match. Yes. I think we picked up on what there was, American, British, I think you said Irish. Yeah. He was a really strange character, but I'm going to be honest, I mean, obviously other than the dream country stuff, everything in London and the palace was probably my favourite bit of the film, if I'm going to be honest. I absolutely loved the way all the characters played off each other. I thought the reactions from all the characters, especially Penelope Wilton as the Queen, she's quite a big actress, big British actress. She's done a lot of films. She played Barbara in Shaun of the Dead. She's done a lot of television. I think she's been in like Doctor Who, a lot of stage work as well. She was absolutely fantastic as the Queen, and also I've got to give a shout out to the ultimate woman, Rebecca Hall.
who was the who played Mary, the Queen's maid. God, I love Rebecca Hall so much. She crops up like every now and then in movies, and I'm like, oh, she's such a good actress. Like, absolutely love her in Prestige and The Town. Fantastic. I would like to have seen her a bit more prominent role in this, but I mean, she's nice. She plays the role well. And just like how everything was laid out, it was right from the animated film, and they really linger on this stuff for quite a long time, and I'm glad they did, because it absolutely deserves to be. When BFG walks in and bounces his head off the chandelier, and then he's sat up on this huge table propped up by a piano, and he's just got so much food, and he's eating it with like a garden pitchfork, just toast and egg. Oh, it was just straight off the page. And I loved it. I loved all that London stuff. It didn't fall apart for me, but I did find the ending of the film a little bit anticlimactic. And I think this is pretty much how it goes in the book. Like, he just takes them back to takes them back to Giant Country. They harness them all up, take them away. Boom, that's it. In the original animated one, the film really has like a big action climax, which I like a lot more. It's probably an embellishment, but you know, they go back. The BFG, I think, tells them that there's 9 giants, and they go there, and the army tie them all up. They rousel around a bit as they're trying to do it, which used to terrify me as a kid, but they get 8 of them, and then the army's joking like, well, there's only 8 of them, he said there were 9, and that's because Flesh Lumpy had walked off and comes back and catches them in the act. And then there's this whole bit where he chases them back to the BFG's house, and Sophie's like hiding in the table as Flesh Lumpy is like trying to like break the table apart to get to her to kill her. And BFG like has to go off to his dream cave and like get a nightmare out, and then rush back to try and save her. And as a film, it feels more natural to have like a big climax at the end where you can go, that's the finale, we've beat the evil, we're done now. Whereas this film, when they were carrying the giants away and like Flesh Lumpy is talking trash to them as he's in the harness, I kept expecting the harness to snap and he'd be the one left there on the island with them, and they'd go all into that, but they really don't. They kind of just drop them on that mountain and then just like send in the snozcumbers. and that's the end of the movie. It's kind of a more merciful end to the giants in this one. In the animated one, it looks like, I don't know if it's like an aircraft carrier or something, but there's like this huge metal pit like containment thing they've got, and they just sort of like dump them into there from the sky. I don't know, it's an interesting comparison, like how the 2 different directors and writers imagine the same material, but I preferred the ending to the animated one because it felt more natural, like more, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, it just felt more like a whole, like it was more earned to have that kind of ending to it. But then again, this was a very different film, as you mentioned earlier. Like, It is very just like a nice film, and I don't know whether, I mean, it's already at 2 hours, and I don't know if anything would have been achieved by adding like another 10-minute, 15-minute chase onto the end. But that was just kind of my thoughts on the ending of it.
I would say that I liked how it ended. They sort of just dump them on an island, and I especially like the last shot of the Flesh Lump Eater as the snozcumbers just completely decimate his face. And I don't know, I thought it was a really satisfying way to conclude. And yeah, it does get sentimental at the end, but I think it's
needed.
It is needed, yeah, but it's not overly sentimental as, say, previous Spielberg films like War Horse, which I absolutely despise.
I still need to see that movie. Haven't watched it yet.
I hate it. It's one of Spielberg's worst movies, just because it's way too sentimental. And I think, whilst this is sentimental at the end, and it does have the very sort of upbeat, happy fairy tale ending, I don't think it's a issue.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I got a smile. I didn't cry at it. I think if I was completely invested in it and just watching it in a quiet cinema, I may have had more of an emotional reaction to the end. But, you know, it's really nice where he hears a voice and he just, I don't know if he says a name, if he just looks up and smiles. It's a really nice ending. It fades to black, hits the credits, beautiful ending. Again, different to the animated one. In that one, she goes back with him to Giant Country. In hindsight, thinking back to that movie, it's great. She goes back to a land where nothing grows. She's got no food. She has to live on snozcumbers for the rest of her life and probably dies of malnutrition. I think the ending worked in that one, but I like that this one stuck to its guns. I think this is how the book ends. It's been years. Jesus Christ, it's been years since I read the book. Probably since I was in school. But I believe it ends the same, where she stays behind and the BFG goes back on its own. But yeah, I mean, I think I've pretty much said everything I can on the movie. I don't know if there's any other scenes that
no, there isn't.
There's just one more I'll just sort of end on that I didn't really care for. Again, I'm not sure if it's straight out of the book or not, but the whole scene where the giants are falling around on like car roller skates and launching the BFG on the bus.
I like that.
And then it ends like the BFG smacks his head into the blood bottler's nuts, and I was just, this. It's like really just kind of like brutal and like stark in like the original animated one. Like they just sort of like grab him as he's running, and then like throw him down, and then like I think Blood Bottler picks up like a boulder and just like bowls it after him, and he has to like dodge it last minute. Like it was literally just that. Whereas this one, it kind of goes on a bit. It's played for slapstick. It's played for laughs, and again, that's why I don't gravitate towards the jokey, funny giants. I wanted like terrifying, end of days, Judgment Day style giants in this one. But that was just a scene I didn't particularly care for.
I don't know. I enjoyed that aspect of it because, like I said before, it's more sort of a sibling runt of the litter type deal. I don't think it was intended to be malicious in the film, and I think it works for that. And because I mean that's probably what siblings would do to their younger brothers or sisters or whatever, and I don't know, I found it worked.
Yeah. See, I guess this was a weird film for me because usually, I mean, I did distance myself and I judged this film on its own merits, but for me it's because BFG is such a big part of my life, that original film, it's so hard for me to like distinguish the two from one another. But no, sort of like to finish on my recommendation again, going to yours. I really enjoyed this movie. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you, but for what it is, it's a nice family movie. I'd recommend it. I'd suggest going to watch it. Obviously, Finding Dory is coming out this week for us in the UK. It's been out for quite a while in the US, so I guess that this is pretty much sadly going to get knocked out of the box office because every kid and every kid in their 20s who grew up with Finding Nemo is probably going to be at the cinema this week watching that.
Yes.
But I absolutely think this film deserves some recognition, whether it's at the Oscars for visual effects or, it shows that Spielberg has still got it. Like whether it's live action, which obviously this is, but he also blends the whole, CGI landscapes and just moving the camera around. The way the camera moves around in this film is fantastic. So Spielberg for me is very hit and miss with his projects usually, but I think this is another solid entry. And as I said earlier, I would like to see more Roald Dahl films done in a similar style to this come out after this one.
You wouldn't want to. You'd want more Roald Dahl films like this. But you wouldn't want them to be like Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate.
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. I want just a respect for the original material and just done to the quality
and
that
not
this one
Johnny
was done.
Depp.
And not Johnny Depp. And just make it look visually like the book. Like that film looked nothing like it.
I'll go. I would say for my recommendation, I think these Roald Dahl sort of kids books do need to get made into sort of movies now because there's a whole audience who hasn't experienced them in kids with kids nowadays that will, I think, have a blast. But if you make them sort of too goofy, like Willy, is it Willy Wonka or is it
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory?
The Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was the 60s one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was too goofy, and I think the performances weren't great, and it just goes. I just keep saying it, goofy.
I think
there
BFG's...
wasn't that level of seriousness to it, which I think the BFG has.
And I think some of his books work better for full films. Like BFG absolutely does. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory does as well. But then you've got shorter ones like The Twits or George's Marvelous Medicine, which I'm not sure would work for a full film.
I'd love to see The Twits as a feature-length motion picture.
I would too.
Especially that horribly dark ending.
Yeah, oh god, yeah. But then you have to also think, like, we've already had Fantastic Mr. Fox not too many years ago. So do we count that one, or do we do another one in like animated? I don't know, but I think that the option is there. But unfortunately, if the studio looks and goes, oh well, BFG didn't make all that much, it was a disappointment at the box office, then they'll probably hold back from making it, unfortunately. But no, I've pretty much said everything I think I can on the BFG. If you've finished with yours,
it's brilliant. It's my favourite film of the year so far.
Huge praise indeed. So be sure to comment, subscribe. That'll do it for our review. Let us know what you thought of the BFG. Have you seen the original animated one? Which one did you prefer? And what's your favourite Roald Dahl book, or which one would you like to see get made into a movie that hasn't already? In terms of what's coming up on the channel, loads more reactions from me. Even more have come out today. I need to get on top of those. Star Wars Celebration footage is getting edited, but obviously I've had to put that on hold to edit all these reactions up. Movie reviews as well. This week we've got Jason Bourne and Finding Dory. Really looking forward to those, so expect a review out for those at the end of the week. And Timestamp Zero episode 4 will be released on the 31st of this month. You can find the straw poll link in the description below to vote on which film you want to see us do a commentary on. It's very close, but there's a week left, so you've still got time to vote and get an all-out winner on that one. It's one of my favourite series on the channel, and I'm looking forward to seeing which movie gets picked for next week. So yeah, that'll do it for our review on the BFG, our video for today, and until the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.